Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Orlah. We're up to Perek Bet Mishnah Tet. Today's Mishnah should be Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbaev and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov Menuchatam Began Eden. Amen. This Mishnah, like the previous Mishnah, discusses a case of dough that was leavened by both permitted and prohibited sourdoughs. The previous Mishnah discussed a case where the prohibited sourdough fell in before the permitted sourdough could leaven the dough. This Mishnah discusses a case where the prohibited sourdough fell in after the permitted sourdough had leavened the dough. If permitted chulin, sourdough, fell into chulin dough and leavened it, and afterwards tiruma sourdough or kileakerem sourdough fell into the dough, and at this point the dough was as leavened as it needed to be. The additional sourdough, however, leavens it more, but it was already as leavened as it needed to be. And there was enough of it to leaven the dough on its own. Had the chulin sourdough not already done so, asur, the dough was forbidden, because the prohibited sourdough leavens it even more. Rabbi Shimon matir, but Rabbi Shimon permits it because this extra leavening spoils the taste of the bread made from the dough. Now the Mephoshim explain there is a principle that any forbidden substance that worsens the flavor of a food, noten tam nivgam, does not prohibit it. In our case, once the dough has been fully leavened by the chulin sourdough, the additional leavening given by the truma sourdough does not improve it, but makes it worse, and therefore the dough is permitted according to Rabbi Shimon. But the first Tana, the Chachamim, they agree with this principle that notin tam nifgam, that any forbidden substance that worsens the flavor of a food does not prohibit it, but the Tana holds that this case is different. Since the over-leavened dough can now be used to leaven other doughs, and this beneficial use comes from the addition of the prohibited sourdough, the dough is forbidden. Rabbi Shimon disagrees. He says the dough is made to be eaten, and in regards to this purpose, it has already been spoiled. But the Rab tells us that the Rab follows the sages that this dough would be asur. That is in Rabotai Mishnah Tet. Mishnah Yud now considers a case in which several prohibited spices combine to season a food. Now, none of these spices could have seasoned the food on its own. Now, the word tavlin is used in this Mishnah to include any ingredient that is used to give flavor food. So, for example, garlic, onions, oil, vinegar, wine, they're all included here in the category of tavlin, as the Rambam writes in his commentary to this Mishnah. Tavlin shenayim ushlosha shemot mimin echad. Spices that are forbidden under 2 or 3 different prohibitions, literally names, like teruma, orlah, and asherah, but they're all of one kind. For example, pepper. So some of the pepper was teruma, some was orlah, some was from an asherah tree, a tree worshipped as an avodah zarah. O mishlosha, or spices made up of 3 different kinds of ingredients, but all 3 are forbidden under the same prohibition. So for example, there was ginger, pepper, and cinnamon, all of which were forbidden as orlah. Asur umitztalfin, all combined to prohibit the food being flavored. And although none of the individual ingredients can flavor the food by itself, the food is still prohibited if the ingredients together give flavor to it. Now the Mishnah is speaking of a case where the tastes of all 3 were similar enough so they can reinforce one another and can be tasted together in the mixture. Since they can be tasted, they do not become nullified in the mixture. Rabbi Shimon Omer, but Rabbi Shimon says, Shnaim ushlosha shemot mimin echad, spices that are forbidden under 2 or 3 different kind of prohibitions, but the spices are all of one kind. So like we said in the previous example, pepper, that is teruma, orlah, and asherah. O shnei minin mishem echad, or spices of 2 different kinds, but both are of one isur, the same prohibition. So for example, we said ginger, pepper, and cinnamon, all of which were forbidden as orlah. And non-mitztarfin, they do not combine to prohibit the food being flavored. According to Rabbi Shimon, the Mephoshim explain, only spices of the same kind and of the same prohibition combine to prohibit a mixture. If they are of different kinds or of different prohibitions, they do not combine and each one becomes nullified by itself. Now, meaning, the Mephoshim explain, as long as there is enough to nullify each ingredient by itself, each one becomes nullified and the mixture can be eaten. Rabbi Shimon is following his opinion in Mishnah Aleph that different prohibitions do not combine to prohibit, but the Rav tells us, "En halacha ki Rabbi Shimon," the halacha does not follow Rabbi Shimon, the halacha follows the Tana Kama, that even if there's spices that are forbidden under 2 or 3 isurim, like teruma, orlah, and neshera, but they're all pepper, or let's say cinnamon, ginger, and pepper, but they are the same isur of orlah, they are prohibited, and they are mitztafim. They combine to prohibit the food being flavored. That is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.